Hello YouTube, Mariel here. Today is part 2 of Narcissist Strings Pearls. In my last video I talked about how my narcissistic husband in his multi-layered passive-aggressive covert attacks always results in several different emotional reactions as well as mental stress. Due to the perpetual state of confusion inside of me. What I have finally come to understand is that those incidents were not just simple, innocent, repetitive incidents. Those were premeditative, covert attacks with the goal of providing himself with his narcissistic supply. As a result of this new knowledge, I have named and color-coded my emotions to help me visualize them. As a result of this new knowledge, I have named and color-coded my emotions to help me visualize them better in an attempt to help me resist letting go of my emotions for him to feed off of. But for now, in this part 2 of how narcissistic strings his pearls, but here is part 2 of how narcissist strings his pearls. No. For now, no. But here, in part 2 of how narcissist strings his pearls, I'm going to give, of course, another. I'm going to give another example of what he does quite systematically or repetitively, and also I'm going to explore more of his feeding pattern, and as well as my reaction to those, you know, different level attacks. So for instance, there's been a few incidents along the years that turned out to be particularly difficult to handle for no reason. At the time I thought they were difficult situations for no reason, but now I know he actually was behind the scenes and exacerbating everything or making everything worse. But anyway, and here is how relenting my husband is, and his drive to feed himself and to feed off of me. So even after years have gone by, in an innocent conversation, in an innocent way, he'll bring up a past stressful incident, forcing me to reminisce and to ruminate over it, with the aim to reopen the scar tissue. Now, of course, at the time I didn't think, I would never have thought he was forcing me to actually to go back and revisit those incidents, because he would, you know, he approaches me nicely and just in normal conversation. So I would just go along. So there's no forcing. But now I can see he was literally forcing, manipulating the event to make sure that I would remember, but not just remember, but reminisce over that stressful situation. And the minute I would say, and I go and say, oh yes, and I'll say innocently, oh yes, I remember, this right away is a signal. This signals him right away that literally it's open season, or it's like open sesame to him. And this is what will happen every time I fell for it, and every time I said, oh yes, that yeah, I remember. So even if the incident itself did not cause any particular damage, or my brain did not store it, or my brain just stored it as a freakish incident, well, my husband will get no. Even if the incident itself didn't cause any particularly long-lasting damage, because my brain would have stored it as a freakish incident, well, my husband, the narcissist, will literally get a knife and start creating a wound while looking and acting displeased with the memory too. And even that action, or that appearance of being displeased with the memory too, is nothing more than a way to create a false intimacy, to carry on with the conversation. And it is also a fake attempt at in false empathy. The emotions that, whether it's empathy or intimacy, that is creating to lead you into that conversation, is completely false and completely manufactured. But then within that same sentence, my husband would start telling me almost straight away how the same thing happened to him, in his travels or at work, and how he was able to deal efficiently with that problem, just like that. So every time we came to that part in his story, I couldn't help but feel inadequate or stupid, really. Then in my mind at the same time, I would feel again like, and then not long after, that first then not long after those starts of emotions, I'll have something else coming into mind, the memory. I'll have like a flashback, and I'll be like thinking, inside my head, thinking, hang on a sec, you were there when that happened, and back then you did nothing. You didn't help. You never came to the rescue. And then I'll pause in my thinking inside my head. But once I remember the facts of the story, and I remember the scene and his position and what he did or what he didn't do at the time. The conversation itself takes on a different feel. Suddenly the conversation will go from feeling comfortable to feeling uncomfortable. I will even end up feeling unsure of how to feel. I mean, already just by this stage, you know, I've already would have felt several different emotions. And then again, I'll go on choosing to suppress my emotion to avoid ruining the evening or the time we were just sharing that he kindly and nicely, I thought, he initiated. Now, one thing I would like to specify as well is that I am no coward. I have never been a coward or behaved in a coward way. Just like me protecting my identity by putting those, the hair over my eyes. This is not cowardly, but I have to think of my children. Even though they're not on my side, I still have to think about them and the future. For now, anyway. And I'm not the kind of person who's always on the attack. I've just never been that responsive, not in that way. It's only when it matters or when I think it's important or when, a clear boundary of this is unsafe, this is clearly not right, this is, and I know in my head that there has to be several things in place, and there has to be a clear thread for me to respond. But I'm not coward. I'm not a coward, and during those attacks, and he will do those kind of things. He is my husband, and I loved him, and I still do, and I respected him, and I trusted his judgment, and I just didn't think those were important enough to jump down his throat, basically. I'm just not equipped like that, unless my life is clearly in present danger. So my tendencies were to suppress my emotions. But even after I would suppress my emotions, I'll still feel extremely confused, because the whole broaching of the subject would feel to me as being insensitive on his part, not very nice, especially when he brags about how he handled it better and he sorted it and it worked out just fine for him. But then again, even if I got upset at that, I would still remind myself that it's no big deal. Scrap that last sentence. So despite my good intention and resolution not to suppress my feeling, there's, the feeling will still remain, and I will not be able to shake it. And quite frankly, I still have no name for it. But I guess it will stem from my brain. I guess it'll stem from my brain trying so hard to reconciliate my knowledge of Mr. Nice Guy that I love, and the Mr. and the beloved person in front of me who is insensitive. And having those two different persons, one in my mind and then the one in front of me, and being confronted with those two kind of people, will lead me to question myself constantly. Either question myself and ask myself, is it trying to make me feel better or not? And those are flashes of insight or flashes of thoughts, internal thoughts. They come and then they go, and then they go so fast, and then something else happens or it does something. So you kind of forget, and you just don't address that. Well, I didn't address those because they were too fast for me to get a good grasp on those thoughts, and then they'll just appear, and then they'll go, and then I'll move on. Well, in this scenario, which happened to me several times, I can now clearly see his feeding pattern. Again, because now I know, and because I am in a process of learning who I'm dealing with, so I'm educating myself and having those flashback of memories. I am now able to see clearly the pattern, and especially his feeding pattern. So, like, let me just point them out quite clearly for you. For one, he goes on to find an old first, he will find an old incident, so he can go and scrape at it. Then first, he finds an old event with just a small, even if it is just a small scrape, that's almost healed. No, not good. First, he he goes on, he will find an old event or incident, so he can just scrape at it, because there might not be any wound, or it might be already well healed, or even if it is small, it has to be scraped. So he's gonna go on the attack and scrape that. Second, he'll then proceed to remove the scab that on your skin, on that particular part, and then he'll start pouring salt all over it. I'm smiling or laughing because it's almost as if I could see him with a knife and a fork and using the seasoning, the seasoning and the salt to season the food. I am the food. I've been the food. It's always been like that. So the image makes me laugh. I hope you're laughing with me. You can laugh at me as well. That's okay. Third, he then observes you, or he observes you and your reaction. No. Third, then he observes me and my reaction as if I am a bug inside a jar. And that within itself is a narcissistic supply, because he feeds, as he observes me going through all of those emotions and reacting to them facially or bodily. He feeds. And what's disturbing is what I've watched not so long ago on YouTube, on how psychopaths that were interviewed have came out to say, have admitted to being able to smell their victim. And the most powerful smell easily detected from them is, that they can easily detect is fear. But there are other range of emotions that they can feel too. And I mean, even those, they feed. So my husband feeds. But anyway, so those three things, those three examples I've just given really constitute one type of attack coming from a very covert narcissistic personality like my husband, which I think, quite frankly, is more sociopathic and psychopathic, minus the violence. But to refer to my title, which talks about the pearls, again, the results from this kind of attack, even if it, like I said, this is one I just described one type of attack, but it still is a multi-layered, covert kind of attack, and which gives him his much needed narcissistic supply. And that narcissistic supply, I call it emotional pearls. I call them emotional narcissistic. I call them emotional pearls, or pearls of humanity. Like I mentioned before, I've had to kind of give them an identity and color code them so that I can visualize them enough so that I can be proactive at holding on to them and protecting my life force, because those emotions are anybody's life force. It is important, it is vital. And in a relationship like I have with my husband, that is so enmeshed and intertwined with life responsibilities, love, and duty, how can one not respond to a seemingly innocently started amicable conversation? And yet, from the start of the conversation, and possibly even the day before, he had most probably already started to seduce me, and in an effort to lead me into that coming conversation so that he could feed. It's a whole manipulation from start to end that starts well before you physically participate in that conversation willingly, innocently, but willingly. And if you see it in that light, I have to agree with that other lady on her channel, which I think is Narcissist Happens. It's total mind rape and emotional rape, premeditated and with intent. So always have to remember that, one, the minute you let your guards down and allow the wolf, the minute you let your guard down and allow the wolf to lead you down memory lane, he wins. Scrap the one before. So one thing to remember in this kind of scenario, this kind of situation, or for anybody watching me who has a covert abuser like mine, is that not to allow him to seduce you. Find a way not to allow him to seduce you, to let your guard down. And don't allow him to manipulate you in down memory lane. Even though memory lane sometimes is nice, but don't go there. Because the minute you do that, the wolf in him, although there is no wolf in him, he is the wolf, the wolf will feed, because you have to understand that to him, being able to seduce you and manipulate you into that conversation is a major victory win for him. And this basically means that he wins, but I don't like to say win. It's more like he feeds, but you, the target, you lose an emotional pearl. Second, when the wolf goes on to open that scab, remove the scab from that tiny little wound, or even a scrape, I should say scrape in my case, because that's mainly what they were. They were not real wounds, they were just scrapes. So the minute he removes those scabs, or even if it is a big wound, and is able to pour salt in that in your skin where the crack is, and there is no resistance from the target, the wolf feeds. Because for that kind of person, how can he resist the rush? How can he resist feeling the rush of power over his domination on the target? That kind of personality, that must be a real fantastic feeling, which means he gets to feed and you lose another pearl. You, the target, lose another pearl. Now, thirdly, if you are a sharp cookie, you mentally, you don't let that kind of nonsense happen to you. You're more emotionally intelligent. So you go and call him out on his nonsense, and you remind him of the fact that, for instance, that he was there back then and he did nothing, and then he has the audacity to come and tell you a similar situation, and he brags about it when it happened to you. He did absolutely nothing. How fair is that? And how could he possibly do that kind of thing? So if you call him out on it, of course the wolf will completely deny it. I'll say he'll deny it. And he's most probably going to say, I was just having a polite conversation, everything was going fine, and you just had to go and make such a big deal out of it. What's wrong with you? Why would you do such a thing? Remember, we're talking about covert narcissists, so that's not the one that's going to come and slap you around and pull your hair or act out in public. So once he responds like that to you, and you are, a strong person with a strong mind, and like I said, a sharp cookie, you're gonna get pissed, And well, even in that show of temper on your part, guess what? He wins. Not only does he win big this time, but he feeds again, and you, the target, would have lost another emotional pearl. And not just one this time. You'll get a few more out of the way to give to him as a freebie. So ultimately, if you are like me and you say nothing and you just remain there twitching in the mire of your mental confusion, mental and emotional confusion, while he calmly feasts on you, life goes on. The fact of the matter is, he's a master at his game. And people like me, we're just catching on. And sometimes when I look at it, my life starts to feel a little bit like some thriller of some sort, and psychological thriller, and I never thought something like that could, well, I never thought even he existed to start with. How could I have then thought? I thought those things were just in movies somewhere, you know. I could never have thought that this could be my fate. But I know now for sure why the golden rule is to go no contact once you leave a narcissistic abuser, psychopath, sociopath partner. With them, you can't block anything or dodge anything long enough. No. With them, you can't scrap the 2 sentences before. With those kind of people, you can't block or dodge for long. You know, you'll try and they will find a way. Those are the type of people that honestly, they don't know what peace is. They don't know what happiness is. They'll always find something. And they are truly vicious creatures. They truly are. So, I get it now. When I'm gonna go, when I'm gonna break free, even though he's the father of my children, thankfully for me, they are old enough now. One is 19 and one just turned 17. But I'll have to absolutely go no contact. Like, it just hurts my mind to think, what am I going to do once my kids are going to graduate college, and then you have those important family thing. How do I navigate it? How do I navigate it? How do I ignore him? How do I not go and shake hands? How do I, what, do I just go and not appear at the event? When my kids are gonna have children, is it a case of just thinking even about that just gives me a headache? And God knows I'm not the kind of person who suffers from headache, but it gives me a headache to try to figure it all out. And you know, I'm thinking those things in conjunction with my children. But then again, you know, I just tried earlier, before making that video, I tried to call my son, and I haven't spoken to him in about a couple of months or more, and I just made a call, and I swear I'm not a hovering parent. I've always tried to give them their space, and he's not responding, and I know that phone of his is glued to his hip. So I guess it's wait and watch my own life unfolds, and react as it happens. I mourn the loss of predictability in my life when it comes to my relationship with my children. I absolutely have no idea what I'm gonna have to do, the steps I'm gonna have to take, how drastic those steps are going to be, and what they're going to do on their part as they mature. You know? And everybody says it's just a phase. Oh, just don't worry. This is just a phase. You know, they're teenagers. You know, my son as well, or my daughter as well. She does this. You know, when they'll need you, they'll come around. But that's just the thing. My children don't need me. They have their dad. They're friends with their dad. They're buddies with their dad. Their dad is now their entire world. Anyway.